Have you ever stopped to think how it's possible for someone to earn the equivalent of more than 30,000 reais per month and still feel broke? How a person who has theoretically made it opens their banking app and feels a tightness in their chest. How someone who earns more than most people is still afraid to look at their credit card bill. And let me ask you something. Could this also be starting to happen to you, even if on a different scale? Because maybe the problem isn't the salary amount. Maybe the problem is something no one ever explained to you. And if you leave now, you'll keep believing that the solution is simply to earn more, when in reality, that's exactly what might be trapping you in this cycle. Imagine the scene. The person studied for years, worked hard, got a good job, started earning in dollars, and saw their life change quickly. At first, it felt like a dream. First, high paycheck. That sense of relief, that automatic thought that now life is solved. And for a few months, it really does feel solved. They start doing things they couldn't before, upgrade their phone, move to a new place, start ordering food without looking at the price so much, travel more, subscribe to services they always wanted, and for the first time feel like they're living and not just surviving. But there's one detail no one notices at that moment. The brain doesn't register that increase in income as stability. It registers it as a new standard. And that changes everything. Because little by little, without noticing, the cost of living starts to rise along with it. And it's not just the financial cost, it's the emotional cost too. Now they don't want to go back to their old life. Now they're used to comfort. Now they're afraid of losing that standard. And this is exactly where the problem begins. Because before, when they earned less, there was a clear limit. They knew they couldn't spend much, knew they had to hold back, knew certain things simply weren't possible. But now everything seems possible. And when everything seems possible, everything starts to happen. Installments appear, subscriptions pile up, small expenses turn into habits, and habits turn into fixed commitments. And without realizing it, that person who earned a lot starts living at the limit of their own salary. And this is more common than it seems. But there's an important difference. When someone who earns little is at the limit, they know it. But when someone who earns a lot is at the limit, it takes them longer to notice. Because money comes in and goes out quickly, but it never seems like it's gone. It just feels tight. And this creates a very dangerous feeling that the problem isn't serious yet, but it is, and it keeps getting worse. Because there's a psychological point that almost no one talks about when you start accumulating money. Even if it's a little, you don't gain peace. You gain fear. Fear of losing, fear of making mistakes, fear of spending, and then needing it later. Before, when you had nothing, anything was already a win. Now, any loss hurts. And it hurts more than it should, because the human brain feels loss much more intensely than gain. So the more you have, the more you feel the risk. And that's why people with high salaries live with a silent anxiety that no one sees. They're not just worried about paying bills, they're worried about maintaining a life that costs too much to fall from. And this creates a constant state of tension. They start thinking, what if I lose this job? What if the dollar drops? What if a big emergency comes up? What if I continue to maintain this standard? And without realizing it, that life that seemed like freedom becomes a disguised prison. Because now it's no longer about living better, it's about not falling. And this completely changes the way the person relates to money. They start working more, accepting more pressure, saying yes more than they'd like, and all of this to sustain a structure that grew without planning. And here comes one of the most common mistakes that almost everyone makes when they start earning well. The person thinks their problem was always earning too little, so when they start earning more, they relax, think now they can make up for everything they didn't deliver before, and that even makes sense. But there's a hidden trap. Because money that comes in without structure goes out without control. And the bigger the impact of losing control. A person who makes mistakes earning little suffers. But a person who makes mistakes earning a lot sinks faster than they imagine. Because the mistakes also get bigger and the lifestyle follows. And then something curious happens. Even with a high salary, there's little left or sometimes nothing at all. And then comes the guilt, the shame, the thought the person doesn't tell anyone about. How do I earn all this and still can't get organized? And that hurts because it feels like the problem is you, but it's not. The problem is no one ever taught you how to deal with this new level of money. No one explained that earning more doesn't solve the problem. It just changes the type of problem. No one showed you that without a system. Money always slips away. And it's not because you're undisciplined. It's because the environment pushes you that way. Everything today is designed for you to spend more as you earn more. Your social standard changes. The people around you change. Your references change. What once seemed expensive now seems normal. And this pulls you toward a level of life that requires more and more income to sustain. And the most dangerous part is that this happens so gradually you don't even notice. When you see it, you're already trapped. And getting out isn't simple, because now it's not just cutting expenses. It's changing an entire lifestyle. It's giving up comforts that have already become part of your identity. It's accepting that maybe you built a life bigger than you should have. And that hurts because no one wants to admit it. No one wants to look at their own life and think they complicated things themselves. But the truth is, this happens to a lot of people, especially those who start earning well very quickly. And here comes an important turning point that few people notice. The problem was never the salary amount. The problem is how it comes in and out of your life. Because money without direction becomes anxiety. Money without structure becomes pressure. Money without a system becomes chaos. And maybe that's why so many people who earn $70,000 a year or even more still feel broke. Not because money is missing, but because control is missing. Clarity is missing. Real security is missing. And security doesn't come from how much you earn. It comes from how much you can maintain without living in fear. And that changes everything. But there's still a deeper part. Because it's not just about money, it's about how your mind reacts to it. And that explains why, even increasing income, the feeling of always chasing never disappears. The person starts to realize that no matter how much comes in, the feeling is always the same. It always feels like something is missing. It always feels like the money already has a destination before it even arrives. And the worst part is, they start living waiting for the next raise, as if that will solve everything. When I reach a certain amount, then I'll be calm. But when they reach that amount, nothing changes. The calm doesn't come. The relief is short-lived. And soon a new number appears in their mind. A new when I get there. And this becomes a silent cycle. Because the problem isn't the number. It's the invisible structure of that person's life, which is formed by an inflated lifestyle without planning, by the absence of a system that organizes money automatically, and by the psychological pressure of keeping all of this running. These three things together create a constant feeling of being pulled backward even while moving forward. And that's why there are people who earn a lot but never feel like they got anywhere, because there's a specific moment where everything changes, and it's not when the person starts earning well or when they pay off debts. It's when they realize that money can no longer depend on willpower to be controlled, because willpower gets tired, fails, and depends on mood, the day and stress level. And someone who lives under constant financial pressure, even earning well, is always tired. So they even try to get organized. Promise they'll track expenses, that they'll save next month, then now it will be different. But a harder week comes and everything falls apart. Not because they don't want to, but because you can't sustain an entire financial life based only on conscious decisions. And that's why intelligent and hardworking people continue to feel lost with money, because they're trying to solve a structural problem with emotional effort. And that never works for long. If every month you need to decide again what to do with your money, you're already at a disadvantage, because the mind's default is to seek immediate comfort, and spending gives an immediate feeling while saving doesn't. So without a system, money will always escape through the easiest paths. And this has nothing to do with lack of discipline. It has to do with how the brain works. And when you understand this, you stop blaming yourself and start seeing what really needs to change. Because the turning point is not earning more. It's taking control out of impulse and putting it into the hands of a simple and automatic system that works even when you're tired. And that completely changes the game. Because instead of trying to have money left at the end of the month, you start deciding its destination at the beginning, before anything, before the credit card, before the bills, before unexpected events. And when you do this, you create an invisible barrier. You stop living on 100% of what you earn, even earning the same amount. And this starts to reduce that constant feeling of being at the limit. But at first, this creates discomfort. It feels like you're tightening things. It feels like you're giving something up. And that's exactly where many people quit, because they want immediate relief. But financial organization doesn't give immediate relief. It gives future stability. And to get there, you need to go through a period where it feels like you're going backward, when in fact you're building a foundation. And that foundation is what will allow you to stop living in fear. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Fear of not managing, fear of losing your standard, fear of needing and not having, fear of going back to a life you've already left behind. And while that fear is in control, it doesn't matter how much you earn, the feeling of being broke remains. But there's a point where the reserve you build stops being just a number and becomes a mental state. Up to a certain level, saving money increases anxiety because you now have something to lose. But after a certain point, something changes. Your brain understands that you're no longer at immediate risk, that a problem doesn't turn into a crisis, that an unexpected event doesn't destroy your life. And when that happens, you start thinking better, deciding better, and acting more calmly. You stop acting on impulse. And that is worth more than any salary increase. Because now you're no longer surviving, you're choosing. And that is the real difference. But that point doesn't come by chance. It's built and depends much more on consistency than on high amounts. Because it's no use earning a lot and keeping nothing, while someone who earns less and builds little by little reaches this state sooner. And when they get there, it feels like life unlocks. Because money stops being a constant problem and becomes a tool, and tools solve things, they don't create anxiety. So now think honestly. How many times have you believed that the problem in your financial life was just earning more? How many times have you placed your hope on the next raise and still the feeling stayed the same? This is not a coincidence. It's a pattern. And until this pattern is broken, nothing really changes. But when you see this, you get ahead of almost everyone, because most people remain trapped thinking the solution is outside when in fact the change begins in how money is organized within your life, and that is under your control. So think carefully. If more money entered your account today, would you know exactly what to do with it, or would it simply disappear like always? Because that answer says much more about your financial life than any salary amount. And if you made it this far, you already understand that it's not about how much you earn. It's about what happens after the money comes in. So if this made sense to you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment the word clarity so I know you stayed until the end.